What if the difference between a total breakdown and a brilliant career-defining decision has, like, absolutely nothing to do with your intelligence?
Right, which is a wild thing to consider.
Yeah, I mean, think about that for a second. We spend our entire lives, acquiring degrees, reading books, optimizing our workflows. But then,
The pressure hits.
exactly,
Hmm.
the pressure hits. You're sitting in this high-stakes meeting, or maybe you just get a sudden, disastrous email from a key client.
And biology just takes over.
It really does. Your chest tightens, your breathing shifts to your upper chest, and your mind starts racing with like 100 worst-case scenarios.
Uh-huh.
And you get this overwhelming biological urge to just do something,
Right.
right? Anything to fix it immediately. And in that specific moment, all your intelligence just goes offline.
It goes completely offline because your brain has effectively been hijacked.
Hijacked.
Yeah, I mean, the biological mechanisms that were designed to save you from a predator are suddenly being applied to a spreadsheet or an email.
Which is so unhelpful.
Extremely unhelpful. And what we're really talking about here is the realization that calmness under pressure is not, it's not a personality trait. We think of it as some innate stoicism, but it's actually an operating system that you can intentionally install and maintain.
And that is exactly the mission of this deep dive today.
Yeah.
We're going to extract the ultimate operating system for mental control.
Yes.
So we're unpacking a really fascinating YouTube audiobook transcript today. It's from the channel Audiobook Rise, and the piece is titled, Train Your Mind to Win in Every Situation.
It's a fantastic source.
It really is. And I want to be incredibly clear right out of the gate for everyone listening. This is not about hype. We are not, doing positive affirmations today.
Far from it, actually.
Yeah.
What makes this framework so compelling is its almost clinical approach to the human mind.
Right.
It completely discards the usual self-help rhetoric. I mean, it doesn't care how motivated you feel.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because whether you are, stepping into a chaotic project at work or navigating a frustrating relationship or just surviving the daily avalanche of information overload.
Which we all face.
Exactly, which
Yeah.
we all face. This framework is going to challenge everything you think you know about handling stress. And it starts by dismantling this huge myth.
The motivation myth.
Yes, the reliance on motivation.
All right, because we've built this entire, multi-billion-dollar industry around the concept of motivation.
Oh, totally. Energy drinks, quotes, everything.
Exactly. We're constantly searching for the right spark to get us in the mood to execute. But the foundational premise of this source material is that motivation is a biological and emotional trap.
A trap.
Yeah, because emotion is weather.
Oh, I like that.
And you cannot control the weather, right? You
Right.
wake up some days feeling incredibly inspired, and other days you're just utterly depleted.
Yeah, for sure.
So if your ability to execute, your ability to remain calm and make good decisions depends on the emotional weather, well, your output is going to be fundamentally unreliable.
I do want to push back on this a little bit, though, because, we're told that passion and motivation are the engines of greatness, right?
Sure, that's the cultural narrative.
Right. So are we really saying that the feeling of being motivated is just useless? Because it feels like we're dismissing the very thing that gets people off the couch in the first place.
Well, it's not that motivation is useless, it's that it's highly volatile. It's chemically temporary.
Okay, chemically temporary. Explain that.
Think about the neurology of motivation. It's largely driven by dopamine.
Right, the reward chemical.
Exactly. Dopamine is associated with anticipation and reward. When you watch a highly motivating video, you get a dopamine spike.
You feel fantastic.
Right, you feel like you can conquer the world. But dopamine spikes are literally designed to be short-lived. They inevitably crash.
Oh, wow.
So when you rely on motivation, you're just relying on a continuous series of chemical spikes. Training, on the other hand, according to the text, is about myelination.
Wait, myelination. Okay, what is that? Let's get into that.
So when you repeat a behavior, your brain wraps the neural pathway associated with that behavior in a fatty substance called myelin.
Okay.
And the thicker the myelin sheath gets, the faster and more automatic the electrical signal travels.
So it's a physical change.
It's a permanent structural change in your brain, yes.
Wow.
So while motivation relies on this fleeting dopamine hit to force an action, training physically alters your neurology, so the action requires almost zero emotional energy.
That makes so much sense. So it's like the difference between caffeine and your cardiovascular system.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, like motivation is the caffeine hit. It spikes your heart rate, makes you feel energized for an hour, but then you're crashing by 2 p.m.
Exactly.
But training is the cardiovascular system. It's the underlying infrastructure. It pumps oxygen quietly, efficiently, whether you're thinking about it or not.
And you build it slowly through resistance.
Right. And the core argument from the text here is that life doesn't test your intelligence first. It tests your composure.
Life tests your discipline before it ever cares about your IQ.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a genius, but you possess zero emotional control, your intelligence is completely inaccessible the second panic sets in.
Because the untrained mind just seeks comfort.
Right. By its very biological nature, it avoids discomfort. When a crisis hits, that is a state of deep psychological discomfort.
For sure.
So the untrained brain will do whatever it takes to escape that feeling immediately, which usually results in a hasty, poorly calculated reaction.
Just to get like 3 seconds of short-term relief.
Exactly, but it destroys your long-term strategy in the process.
Okay, I hear what you're saying about shifting from volatile emotion to structured training. But let's be real for a second.
Sure.
If I'm in a boardroom
Right.
and a colleague blatantly insults my work or tries to throw me under the bus.
A classic high-pressure scenario.
Yeah. And if I just sit there and, organize my emotion rather than showing some teeth, I'm going to look incredibly weak.
Wow.
People respect passion, don't they? They respect someone who stands up for themselves. Doesn't this framework risk turning us into passive, emotionless robots?
See, that is precisely the trap the untrained mind falls into.
Really?
Confusing reactivity with strength. It's a massive misconception. A trained mind does not eliminate emotion. It does not become passive.
Okay, then what does it do?
It organizes the emotion to be deployed strategically rather than impulsively. Let's look at your boardroom scenario.
Yeah, let's use that.
If someone insults your work and your immediate reaction is to flush red, raise your voice, and defensively attack them back.
Like this is the natural urge.
Right, but you haven't demonstrated strength there. You've actually demonstrated that your colleague has a remote control to your nervous system.
Oh, wow. Okay, that hurts a little.
They pushed a button, and you reacted exactly as they dictated.
So they successfully hijacked my operating system.
Precisely. You gave them complete leverage. True strength, the kind that commands silent authority in a room, is experiencing that exact same surge of anger.
Because the anger still happens.
The anger still happens. Your heart rate might still go up. The adrenaline still hits your bloodstream. But you do not let it dictate your physical response.
You pause.
You pause, you hold the eye contact, you let the silence hang in the air for a deeply uncomfortable 3 seconds.
Oh, that's powerful.
And then you respond with a completely neutral, lowered voice. That level of control is terrifying to an opponent.
Because it signals you can't be moved by external chaos.
Exactly. The framework calls this the shift from impulse to intention. It's not about suppressing what you feel. It's about refusing to let the feeling hijack the steering wheel.
That is a phenomenal distinction. The separation between feeling and acting.
It's everything.
And that actually brings us to the battlefield where this separation takes place. Because external failures, like snapping in that boardroom.
Or sending a terrible email.
Right, sending that defensive email. Those external failures are always preceded by internal losses. The real battlefield is entirely inside your own head.
Yes. The foundational rule of this entire philosophy is that you must win inside before you can ever hope to win outside.
And it's silent, isn't it?
Completely silent.
Yeah.
That's what's so insidious about it. Most of us don't even realize the inner battle is happening.
Yeah.
It happens in a fraction of a millisecond when doubt interrupts your focus, or when hesitation replaces clarity.
So by the time you actually open your mouth to say something stupid, the inner battle has already been lost.
Exactly. You're in reaction mode.
Reaction mode. The text explicitly warns against this. Because in reaction mode, your standards completely evaporate, right?
They vanish. Your long-term thinking collapses into a desperate grab for short-term relief.
You say things you have to spend weeks apologizing for.
Or you make strategic compromises you later have to frantically justify.
And this all happens because we failed to utilize what might be the most important concept in this whole deep dive.
The space between stimulus and response.
Yes, the space.
That space is where your entire freedom as a human being resides. Every situation you will ever encounter has 2 distinct layers.
Layer 1 and layer 2.
Right. Layer 1 is the external event. A flight gets canceled, the market crashes, someone cuts you off in traffic. You have absolutely zero control over layer 1.
None.
But layer 2 is your internal response to that event. You have 100% control over layer 2.
Wow.
And the moment you blur the lines between those 2 layers, you surrender your leverage.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Think about the language we use every single day. We use grammar that literally programs us to be victims of our environment.
Yes, the language trap.
We say things like, he made me so angry, or this project is stressing me out, or the traffic ruined my morning.
And those statements sound completely benign to us. We hear them constantly.
But they're not benign, are they?
No, from a neurological and psychological standpoint, those statements are declarations of complete surrender. Yes. When you give credit to external forces for your internal state, you are quietly accepting weakness.
You're saying, I have no mental training.
Exactly. You're saying the external world has the right to dictate my emotional reality, but the truth is, no one makes you angry.
The traffic does not ruin your morning.
The external event happened, and you reacted with anger because your mind was not trained to utilize the pause.
So it's like a mental firewall.
I love that, a firewall.
Yeah, if you think about network security, right? The virus, the rude comment, the bad news, the chaos, it's going to try to breach your system.
Inevitably.
You can't stop the viruses from existing. But the firewall is the pause.
Right.
The pause stops the malicious code from actually executing and crashing your system. But building that firewall is agonizing at first, isn't it?
It's deeply uncomfortable because when someone attacks you, your mind is screaming at you to defend yourself immediately.
To prove you're right. To fire back.
And that intense urge to speak, that visceral pressure building in your chest to just react, that is what the text calls the training signal.
The training signal. Okay, break that down.
Think about physical exercise. When you're lifting weights and your muscles start to burn and shake, you don't interpret that as a sign to panic.
No, you know that means it's working.
Exactly. You interpret it as the mechanism of growth. Muscle soreness tells you the physical structure is adapting.
Oh, I see.
So in mental training, that agonizing discomfort, the burning desire to snap back at someone, is your mental muscle shaking under the weight.
Wow. It tells you the inner game is currently being challenged.
And this is exactly where 99% of people fail. They drop the weight.
They just choose the short-term comfort of reacting.
Exactly, rather than bearing the temporary discomfort of holding the pause.
But how do we actually train this? Because we clearly can't wait for a massive, life-altering crisis to practice, right?
Right?
So you don't try to build a firewall while the system is already melting down.
No, that's way too late. The framework emphasizes what it calls boring repetitions.
Boring repetitions.
Yes, you have to practice this in the most mundane, frustrating moments of daily life. The training ground isn't the boardroom. It's the grocery store line.
Or a traffic jam.
Or a traffic jam. Or a minor misunderstanding with your partner over who is supposed to take out the trash.
Right. We usually just view those as annoying interruptions.
But under this operating system, those moments are the day. They are the repetitions.
So if you can't hold it together in traffic,
If you cannot maintain your composure when a stranger cuts you off in a merge lane, you have absolutely zero chance of maintaining your composure when a $1 million deal falls apart.
that makes total sense.
Yeah.
So every time you feel that urge in traffic and you consciously choose to pause and breathe.
You're doing a mental push-up. You are thickening the myelin sheaths around that pathway of control.
You're reinforcing the new identity. I am someone who observes.
Not someone who reacts.
So if you're listening to this, think about the last time you lost it over something trivial. Maybe you sent a snarky Slack message because someone asked a question you already answered.
We've all done it.
Right. You traded long-term professional respect for a tiny hit of superiority. So how do you start fixing that? You start by noticing.
Just observing the mechanism.
Yeah. Notice when your mind rushes ahead to catastrophize. Notice the exact physical sensation right before you send a passive-aggressive text.
And noticing without judgment is the absolute first act of discipline. The moment you observe the urge to react, you've already created the space.
You've stepped outside the emotion.
Exactly. And once you notice it, you interrupt it. You deploy the pause, and you ask yourself a highly analytical question.
What's the question?
What would a controlled strategic response look like right now?
Oh, that's good.
Because asking that question forces blood flow back into the prefrontal cortex, the logical part of your brain.
And pulls power away from the amygdala.
Right, which is driving the emotional panic.
Okay, so we've established the pause as the firewall. It stops the immediate reaction. But what happens next?
Right, because the firewall just buys you time.
Exactly. It doesn't make the decision for you. What is the actual operating system running behind the firewall? How do we determine what to do once we've paused?
That brings us to discipline. Discipline is the ultimate liberator.
Yes. And this part of the framework draws a massive, heavy line in the sand between relying on discipline versus relying on our feelings.
It states very clearly, feelings are highly unstable data points.
Unstable data points.
They are inherently unstable. Your emotional state at any given moment is just an amalgamation of, how much sleep you got last night, your blood sugar levels.
Weather outside.
Exactly. Or whether someone gave you a compliment 3 hours ago. If your actions depend on this chaotic stew of variables, your life is going to be wildly inconsistent.
So discipline exists to solve human inconsistency.
Exactly. And in this context, discipline isn't about punishing yourself. It's not military-style rigidity just for the sake of suffering. It's about actively removing choice from the moments where choice weakens you.
Okay, let me stop you right there, because this is going to be a major point of friction for a lot of people listening.
How so?
Well, the framework argues that feelings are just information, not instructions. But our entire modern culture tells us the exact opposite, right?
That's true.
We're told to listen to our gut, to honor our truth, validate our feelings. If I treat my feelings just as a blinking light on a dashboard rather than the steering wheel, aren't I ignoring vital intuition?
It's a great question.
Like, what if my gut is telling me not to trust a certain business partner?
This is where we have to be really precise about the difference between a dashboard warning light and the steering wheel.
Okay.
The framework is not telling you to smash the dashboard and ignore the warning lights.
Right.
Intuition, fear, hesitation, these provide highly valuable data. If you feel a deep sense of dread about signing a contract with a new partner, that's vital information.
You shouldn't just ignore it.
No, you should investigate it. Look closer at the contract. Do more due diligence. But, and this is the critical divergence, if that feeling of dread becomes the instruction itself.
Meaning the dread dictates your actions.
Right. Meaning it dictates that you just avoid the meeting, ghost the partner, and procrastinate out of anxiety.
Then your behavior has become reactive.
Exactly. You let the blinking oil light grab the steering wheel and drive the car into a ditch.
I love that visual. So, strong minds separate the emotion from the execution.
Yes.
They feel the resistance. They acknowledge the blinking light, and they act according to their standards anyway.
They feel the fear of public speaking, they acknowledge the elevated heart rate, and they step onto the stage anyway.
They feel the crushing boredom of data entry, and they stay consistent anyway. Because progress doesn't require a motivated emotional state.
It requires a standard of behavior.
A standard. Let's talk about standards.
Standards are the automation of discipline. A standard is a non-negotiable rule you follow regardless of your mood. Think about the most basic daily routines. You don't wake up and ask yourself, do I feel motivated to brush my teeth today?
Well, I hope not.
Right. You don't approach a red light and consult your intuition on whether you should stop. Those behaviors are fully automated.
They don't require decision-making calories.
Exactly. Mental discipline is simply extending that automation to higher-level behaviors. It's deciding in advance who you are and how you will act.
And then just executing that predetermined code.
Regardless of the emotional weather.
The calorie savings there must be massive. Because if you think about it, most of our emotional exhaustion doesn't actually come from doing the work.
No, it comes from the negotiation.
Yes. The constant draining internal negotiation, the I'll do it later, I don't really feel like it today, maybe tomorrow.
That internal debate burns way more cognitive energy than just sitting down and doing the task.
Discipline completely eliminates that mental noise. It creates a quiet predictability.
And predictability is the foundation of trust. Not just trust from your colleagues or your family, but critically, trust from yourself.
Self-trust, that's huge.
When you consistently execute your standards despite your feelings, you build an unshakable self-trust. You stop overthinking every move.
You stop seeking constant external reassurance.
This is exactly why disciplined individuals project such a massive aura of confidence. They aren't waking up and guessing who they're going to be today.
They already decided weeks ago. The debate is over.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have the internal firewall of the pause. We have discipline over feelings to guide our daily decisions. But let's scale this up.
Sure.
What happens when the external world doesn't just present a minor annoyance, but erupts into total, unpredictable chaos?
Genuine chaos.
Yeah, I'm talking about a genuine crisis at work. Servers go down during a launch, a sudden medical emergency, a massive financial hit. How does a disciplined mind actually process high-pressure environments without short-circuiting?
Well, the framework drops a fascinating, somewhat brutal truth here. It says, pressure does not create weakness. it reveals it.
Wow. Pressure reviews it. That's a harsh truth.
It is, but it's essential. Pressure is an accelerant. It exposes the baseline level of training you have established.
Let's look at the biology of that. What
Yeah.
happens in a crisis?
When your brain perceives a high-pressure threat, it instantly floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline.
Fight or flight.
Right. Your heart rate spikes to pump blood to your major muscle groups. Because of this, your breathing becomes incredibly shallow and shifts to your upper chest.
Your muscles physically tighten, right, like in the shoulders and jaw.
Yes. And critically, your thoughts speed up dramatically as the brain frantically searches for a solution.
And if you don't notice this happening,
Your mind loses executive control before you even realize you're panicking.
which leads to what might be the most counterintuitive insight in the entire discussion. When we're stressed out, what's the first thing we tell ourselves?
Calm down.
Exactly. Calm down. Just think rationally. We try to use our racing mind to fix the panic in our body.
But the framework explicitly states, mind does not calm body under pressure. Body calms mind.
Body calms mind. You cannot think your way out of a physiological panic attack.
You absolutely cannot reason with adrenaline.
You have to build calmness from the outside in.
Yes, because when you are in a state of high physiological arousal, your prefrontal cortex, the rational part of the brain, is literally receiving less blood flow.
The amygdala is running the show.
So trying to mentally argue yourself into a calm state is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline.
Okay, so what's the solution?
The framework provides a purely mechanical solution. You must use the body to send a safety signal to the brain. This involves the vagus nerve.
The vagus nerve. Okay, break down exactly how we trigger that in the middle of a crisis. What are the physical levers?
It's a sequential physical checklist. First, you forcefully slow your breathing and drive it down into your diaphragm.
So belly breathing, not upper chest.
Exactly. Drive it into your belly. Second, you consciously drop your shoulders away from your ears.
Because they're probably hunched up.
Right. Third, you unclench your jaw.
Wow. Okay. Breathe, drop shoulders, unclench jaw.
These specific physical actions aren't just symbolic, they mechanically stimulate the vagus nerve.
And the vagus nerve is the superhighway of the resting system, right?
Yes, the parasympathetic nervous system. When the vagus nerve is stimulated, it releases acetylcholine, which physically lowers your heart rate.
It sends a neurological broadcast to the brain.
It says, "We are not being chased by a tiger. The physical threat has passed."
That is mind-blowing. The body is the remote control for the brain.
And only after the body settles down does the blood flow return to the prefrontal cortex, allowing you to actually think clearly.
If you ignore this physical sequence, you're just trapped in panic.
Exactly.
But okay, once you ground the body, you now have your prefrontal cortex back online.
Right.
But you still have to deal with the chaos itself.
Right. The servers are still down. The
Yeah.
client is still furious.
Exactly. And the framework points out that chaos in the environment is actually harmless. Chaos is only dangerous when it enters the mind.
Right.
A perfectly calm environment is useless if your mind is scattered. But a chaotic environment can be navigated masterfully by a clear mind. So how do untrained minds react to environmental chaos?
The untrained mind reacts to chaos by matching its frequency.
Meaning it speeds up.
Yes. When there are 10 fires burning, the untrained mind tries to process all 10 simultaneously.
It rushes decisions.
It attempts to multitask, rapidly switching attention between emails, Slack messages, phone calls, and most dangerously, it consumes way more information.
Hoping that more data will magically produce clarity.
Exactly, constantly refreshing feeds, asking for more opinions.
But the framework notes that more input without structure just creates more noise.
It does.
It's like a computer processing analogy. When you panic, your brain is like a computer running 50 heavy background applications at once.
The CPU is completely maxed out.
The cooling fan is screaming, the screen freezes. You can't open a brand new program to try and fix the problem. You have to open the task manager and aggressively force quit the noise.
One application at a time.
Exactly. One at a time to free up the RAM. That is what sequential thinking is.
That is a perfect analogy. Clear thinkers operate entirely differently under pressure. When chaos increases, they deliberately slow down.
They reduce their inputs.
They isolate themselves from the panic of others. They understand that the human brain cannot operate simultaneously on complex problems.
It must operate sequentially.
One action, then the next action, then the next.
Instead of trying to put out the roaring fire by throwing a bucket of water, then a blanket, then dirt in a panicked frenzy, the disciplined approach is ruthlessly sequential.
Assess the fire, choose the hose, turn on the water, aim at the base.
But doing this, shutting down the other 49 background applications, requires aggressively protecting your attention. It requires mental decluttering.
And that elimination process is intensely uncomfortable. To focus sequentially, you have to say no.
You have to say no to distractions.
No to tasks that feel productive but add no real value. And no to the unnecessary panicked opinions of your coworkers.
Untrained minds are terrified of this elimination, aren't they?
Yes, because they're driven by the fear of omission. What if I miss an important email? What if I choose the wrong priority?
Right.
But the trained, clear thinker accepts a fundamental reality of crisis management.
Yeah.
You cannot eliminate all risk. You can only eliminate noise.
I really want to highlight a specific, powerful language shift the framework recommends for these moments.
The language shift is crucial.
Yeah, when everything's hitting the fan, the default internal narrative is, this is overwhelming. But the framework says you must actively change that sentence to, this is complex, break it down.
Just swapping that one word.
Right, from overwhelming to complex. It completely alters how your brain engages with this scenario.
Because words dictate perception. Overwhelming is an emotional state. It implies that the environment is larger than you and that you are a helpless victim.
It induces paralysis.
Exactly. Complex, on the other hand, is an objective description of a system. A complex system has many moving parts, but it is fundamentally a puzzle.
And puzzles can be solved if you break them down.
It shifts your brain from an emotional defense posture into an analytical attack posture.
And the ultimate tool for breaking down that complexity is asking one highly specific question. The framework provides the exact phrasing. What is the one thing that matters most right now?
Not what are the 5 things.
Not what does my 20-item to-do list say? What is the one thing? That question acts as a surgical scalpel.
Because in any crisis, 90% of the noise is irrelevant to survival.
It cuts right through the false urgency where every issue feels critical.
By forcing yourself to identify the single most critical variable, the one thing that matters most, you anchor your focus. You execute that one thing, and then you ask the question again.
That is how you sequence your way out of chaos. So if you're listening to this, visualize your own worst-case scenario at work. Your inbox is a disaster. Deadlines are collapsing. Before you react, remember the sequence.
Ground the body first.
Drop the shoulders. Unclench the jaw. Breathe into the belly. Send the safety signal. Then shift the language. This isn't overwhelming. It's just complex.
And ask, what is the one thing that matters most right now?
That is how you survive the moment. But here is the pivot in the deep dive. Surviving a 5-minute moment of chaos requires calm. But what about surviving a grueling 5-month project?
A very different challenge.
Right, or surviving a long recovery from an illness, or mastering a difficult new skill. The pause is not enough to sustain you for half a year. That requires an entirely different mental muscle.
Which brings us to mental endurance.
Mental endurance, let's get into it.
Mental endurance is a completely different energy system than the acute calmness we just discussed. It's not about short-term intensity.
It's about staying power.
It's the ability to remain steady and consistent when the initial motivation has completely evaporated, when the results are agonizingly slow.
And when your daily effort feels completely invisible.
This valley of invisible progress is the exact graveyard where most people abandon their goals.
They just quit.
And crucially, they do not quit because they physically or intellectually cannot continue. They quit because they were no longer comfortable.
The framework dives deep into the mind's relationship with comfort here. The human brain is evolutionarily wired to conserve energy, right?
Constantly, it seeks the path of least resistance.
So when prolonged effort starts to generate psychological discomfort, the untrained mind interprets that discomfort as an evolutionary warning sign.
It says, warning, this isn't working. We are wasting energy. We need to stop.
But the core argument is that this is simply resistance. And resistance is the exact marker that meaningful growth has commenced.
We have to make a vital distinction here that the framework emphasizes: the difference between discomfort and damage.
Discomfort versus damage.
Most people conflate the two. Let's use physical training as an analogy again. If you're running and your lungs burn and your legs feel heavy, that is discomfort.
It's making you stronger, expanding your cardiovascular capacity.
Right. But if you feel a sharp, stabbing pain in your knee, that is damage. That will weaken you. You need to stop.
So how does that apply mentally?
In mental pursuits, Most people have never stayed in a difficult situation long enough to learn the difference between the two. They feel the initial heavy discomfort of a complex task.
Like the frustration of learning a new software.
Exactly. Or the boredom of editing a long document. And they instantly assume it's damaging their well-being, so they quit to protect themselves.
They drop the weight. But the text points out that this initial discomfort is simply the nervous system adjusting to a new level of required effort.
It's growing pains.
Right. If you quit too early, you are literally teaching your brain that sustained effort is a threat that should be avoided. You're conditioning yourself to be fragile.
But if you stay just a little bit longer, past the initial wave of desire to quit, you teach your mind that effort is survivable.
And this applies to virtually every cognitive function. Focus, emotional regulation, delayed gratification,
Can you tolerate the sensation of boredom without immediately reaching into your pocket for your phone?
which is so hard these days. The framework suggests that our modern environment is actively hostile to mental endurance.
Hostile is the perfect word. Modern life is essentially a hyper-optimized dopamine loop. TikTok, Instagram, email notifications.
We're constantly trained to expect instant feedback.
Immediate entertainment and zero friction. This systematically atrophies the mind's ability to stay with prolonged effort.
But the framework argues that the ability to endure boredom is the actual unglamorous gateway to mastery.
When the novelty of a new project fades, all that remains is the repetitive work itself.
But let me challenge this concept of endurance, because there has to be a limit, right?
Sure.
If we just blindly endure everything, don't we risk beating our heads against a brick wall forever?
It's a fair point.
Like, if a business strategy is fundamentally flawed or a relationship is truly toxic, endurance just means we're failing for a much longer period of time. When does endurance cross the line into stubborn stupidity?
That is a phenomenal question, and it's exactly where the framework introduces its protocol for reframing failure.
Reframing failure.
Endurance is not about blind, repetitive suffering. It's about how you process the data of your repeated efforts.
It's okay. Process the data.
Untrained minds see failure as an immediate signal to stop because they deeply personalize the outcome. They attach their ego to the result.
So if the project fails, their internal narrative is, I'm an imposter.
I'm not smart enough. When failure attacks your identity, your ego steps in and forces you to quit in order to protect your self-worth.
You quit to save face with yourself.
Exactly. But a mind trained in endurance strictly separates the outcome from its identity. To the trained mind, failure is stripped of its emotional weight.
It becomes pure, objective data.
It is information regarding the efficacy of a specific approach, not a final verdict on your value as a human being.
So the questions shift entirely. Instead of, why am I such a failure? The questions become analytical.
What specific variable failed?
What assumptions were incorrect?
What needs to be adjusted for the next iteration?
When failure is treated as cold, hard information, you don't just endure blindly. You adjust the parameters, and you endure intelligently. You iterate.
But processing that data, actually looking at your failures objectively, requires a specific environment. And the framework states that environment is silent.
Silence is deeply terrifying for the modern, untrained mind.
Think about it. When people experience a setback, what do they immediately do? They fill the space with noise.
They complain to coworkers, vent on social media.
They turn on a podcast to drown out their thoughts. They seek validation. They use noise to escape the uncomfortable reality of the failure.
But a mind built for endurance has the capacity to sit in silence without physical agitation.
Endurance fundamentally includes the ability to stay in a room with your own thoughts, analyzing your own missteps without reaching for an external distraction.
If your brain is constantly stimulated by external noise, it never strengthens its own capacity to hold focus on difficult truths.
Right.
So we've covered a massive amount of psychological terrain so far. We started with the internal firewall of the pause.
We explored structured discipline over feelings.
We broke down the physiological mechanics of grounding the body to create calm.
And we just looked at building the endurance to outlast boredom.
But what is the fuel? What actually powers this entire operating system day in and day out? That brings us to the architect of your identity, the literal words you speak to yourself.
And the physical act of showing up.
Yes. Let's talk about the voice inside your head. It's relentless, right? It never stops narrating.
It provides explanations for your failures. It projects anxieties into your future. And the most dangerous assumption we make is assuming that this internal voice is just a passive observer telling us the objective truth.
But the framework makes this foundational, paradigm-shifting claim. Your self-talk is not commentary. It is direct instruction.
Let's really unpack that. It is writing the code for your nervous system. It tells your biology whether to brace for impact or relax.
So if you walk into a presentation and your inner voice says, I always mess these up, this is impossible.
You are not making a passive observation. You are issuing a direct biological command to your nervous system to initiate a panic response.
You're telling your brain to release cortisol.
Exactly. The framework points out that untrained self-talk is inherently emotional. It exaggerates the negative.
It uses sweeping generalizations like always and never.
It dramatizes minor inconveniences into massive catastrophes. Untrained self-talk is a chaotic, dramatic narrator.
So how does a trained mind talk to itself?
A trained mind does not allow the internal voice to speak in absolute emotional terms. It programs the voice to deliver precise, actionable instructions. And it's not just the words. The tone of the internal voice is equally important.
Right, the tone. If your internal tone is harsh and critical, you create massive physical tension.
If your tone is panicked and rushed, you generate frantic behavior. If your tone is defeated, you literally drain the energy from your body.
So what is the ideal tone? If we aren't supposed to be harsh critics, but we also established earlier we aren't doing fluffy affirmations, what does the trained voice sound like?
The framework defines the trained internal voice as neutral and firm.
Neutral and firm.
It's not overly compassionate to the point of making excuses, and it's certainly not cruel. It is the voice of a highly competent pilot flying through turbulence, neutral and firm.
When a mistake happens, instead of the emotional spiral of why do I always ruin everything, the trained voice is highly directive.
It simply asks, what is the requirement right now?
What is the requirement right now? I love that. It cuts through all the self-pity.
Because requirements are objective, measurable actions. Feelings are subjective traps.
If you're listening, analyze your own internal monologue today. Is the voice in your head an authority figure setting a clear standard, or is it a panicked critic generating fear? You have to intentionally become your own neutral, firm authority.
Because that internal authority is what empowers you to execute the final and arguably most critical principle of this entire framework.
The physical act of showing up no matter what.
The framework makes a profound observation about long-term success. It states that the vast majority of people do not fail because they lack talent, intelligence, or strategy.
They fail because they just disappear.
They vanish. They stop showing up when the initial motivation fades or when the progress curve flattens out.
The ultimate expression of mental training is the ability to show up and execute without requiring emotional permission from yourself.
Schedule beats mood.
Schedule beats mood. It's the ultimate trump card. Every single time. When you build the discipline to show up consistently, regardless of the emotional weather, you bypass the decision-making process.
The exhausting internal debate vanishes. Do I feel inspired enough to write this report? It simply does not matter.
You act because action is your standard. It's what you do. And that consistency eventually compounds into identity.
I am someone who does the work. That identity is vastly stronger than a fleeting state of motivation will ever be.
The psychological power of attendance cannot be overstated. The framework offers a brilliant strategy for the really dark days, the days where you're exhausted and depleted.
On those days, it suggests stripping away all the pressure of high performance and focusing solely on the metric of attendance.
Just ask yourself, did I show up today, yes or no?
That is a binary, entirely controllable metric. The quality of the output might not be a 10 out of 10 that day, but the attendance is completely within your control.
And there's a neurological benefit to that, right? It's not just about getting the work done poorly. By showing up, you're actually training the brain.
Exactly. When you show up repeatedly, especially when you are anxious or unmotivated, you teach your nervous system that taking action is physically safe.
You prove to your amygdala that the task will not kill you.
This repeated exposure fundamentally reduces fear and anxiety over time. You myelinate the pathway of execution.
Habit turns into identity. And over a long enough timeline, identity inevitably produces results.
Yes.
Okay, let's bring this all together. We set out at the beginning of this deep dive to extract a comprehensive operating system for mental control from this audiobook Rise transcript.
And we haven't just looked at a list of disjointed life hacks.
We've explored a deeply interconnected system. We started with understanding that motivation is a fleeting chemical, while training physically rewires your baseline.
We established the internal firewall of the pause to prevent the amygdala from hijacking your responses.
We replaced the unreliability of feelings with the automated structure of discipline. We learn to mechanically ground the body to restore blood flow to the brain during chaos.
allowing us to think sequentially instead of simultaneously.
We explored how to build endurance by enduring boredom and stripping failure of its emotional identity. And finally, we looked at programming our nervous system with neutral, firm self-talk and the undeniable power of simply showing up.
This entire architecture is designed to keep you steady when chaotic situations completely break untrained people.
It is a formidable system, but the framework issues a crucial warning at the very end.
Yes, mental training is not a destination. It's not a certificate you earn and hang on the wall thinking you're permanently cured of reactivity.
It's a strict maintenance protocol.
Just like cardiovascular endurance will slowly atrophy if you stop working out, your mental firewall will degrade if your discipline slips. You are never done training.
There will be days when you get terrible sleep, your cortisol is high, and absolutely nothing goes according to plan.
The temptation will be to say, today is too chaotic, I'll return to my discipline tomorrow. But the framework insists that chaos is never an excuse to abandon the structure.
Chaos is the exact trigger that demands you return to your fundamentals. When the world spins out of control, you ground the breath.
You slow your reactions. You simplify your decisions to the one thing that matters most.
And you show up anyway. It's about becoming the kind of person who maintains control in profoundly imperfect conditions. Winning isn't about getting lucky.
And it isn't about perfect timing or perfect inspiration. It is about steady, highly reliable execution. The reward is absolute, unshakable internal stability.
And this brings us to one final, truly provocative thought, an extrapolation of this entire philosophy for you to take away and consider.
We have spent this entire deep dive intensely focused on training your mind, analyzing your reactions, building your discipline.
But if we accept the premise that every panicked reaction, every hasty and aggressive action is simply the product of underlying biological wiring and a lack of training.
How does this shift how you view the rest of the world?
Right. Think about the people who wrong you. If a colleague viciously snaps at you in a meeting or a driver dangerously cuts you off,
And you suddenly realize through the lens of this framework that they aren't necessarily evil or malicious. What if they are simply operating with completely untrained minds?
wildly reacting to their own internal spikes of cortisol and unmanaged pressure? Does that realization fundamentally alter the nature of your conflicts?
Perhaps true. Elite-level mastery isn't just about controlling your own inner game. Perhaps ultimate mastery is looking at the chaotic, frustrating behavior of everyone else and realizing it is mostly just a symptom of the rigorous internal training they haven't yet learned how to do.
So the next time the pressure hits, the deadline moves, or the conflict arises, and you feel that familiar, dangerous tightness grab your chest, remember that the X-ray of the situation might look complex, but your internal protocol is crystal clear.
Ground the body. Pause. Observe the options. Choose the sequence.
You are no longer a victim reacting to the weather. You are in training.